where the content around mental health and leadership has come from is because I think that's one of the biggest things that's holding us back in our industry. And I looked at the stats, and Clive, you're going to be familiar with this one, but mining has 3 times the suicide rate of the general population. And we never talk about mental health. And it boggles my mind because it affects each and every one of us, whether it's us or our spouse or our children. And this is why this conversation is so important to me.
I know when I've done training in mine sites, and when you close the door on that donga, they call them here, and you have a shower, a single bed, a wardrobe, and a hand basin, and a toilet. That's it. And you know, there can be bars on the windows. It's the closest thing I've ever felt to prison. And I can assure you that if you have trouble at home, or you're unrestricted COVID lockdown, fly in, fly out, longer periods away from home, longer periods at site, social distancing at site, you're not getting that social interaction. It can be awful. I'm not surprised at all that the suicide rates are going up, and in mining, and you know, people don't talk about it. And I agree with you, Robert. It's one of the reasons I wanted to put this event on. So I'm pleased you're so open to talking about it. Clive, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just, thank you, Rob, for that. That was, I'd like maybe to talk a little bit more about mining as we go through. I'm sure we'll find the time to do that. Not just mining though, Rob. It's what I would call the, perhaps unfairly, but I labelled them the macho industries. So sure, mining's in there, but also in there is oil and gas, also in there is construction. Here in Australia, we lose a construction worker to suicide every second day. Again, overrepresented, and again begs the question why those industries. And you know, I'll maybe share a little bit more as we go through. But just a brief intro. And again, thanks, Jeff, for the invite. Happy to be joining such a splendid team here on the panel. So my background is, and by the way, I had a cheeky email during the week saying I hear Clive Lloyd's on the webinar, and literally thought it was Clive Lloyd, the famous cricketer. So if you are tuning in expecting to see a legendary cricket player, you'd be sorely disappointed around now. So
you're just getting a legendary leader instead.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're very kind, but that often happens. People see Clive Lloyd and they think it's this cricketer. And Robbie, as a Canadian, you guys don't play cricket. You've probably not come across that name. But anyway, so I am a psychologist, speaker and author, and I've just celebrated my quarter of a century as a psychologist. All right, so I've been a psychologist for a long time.
Fantastic.
And so obviously being a psychologist, mental health is a big part of that. I started in psychology treating addictions. I actually specialized in treating addictions. And then you learn a lot in that area. And the nature of addiction is that from time to time, I was a clinical director of a very big rehab. And from time to time, I ended up having to sit down with a mum and or a dad and explaining to them why their son or daughter was never coming home again. Because they passed away, usually because, you know, drug-related incidents such as an overdose. And it was alarming just how frequently that happened. And so that was my kind of face-to-face introduction with severe mental health challenges. But the thing that struck me was the grief involved around that. So grief counselling was something I ended up doing a lot of. And because I became very experienced in that area, through EAP providers and worksite, often I was then called in after an incident, back to Rob, what Rob was saying, at a mine site where there'd been a fatality. And now the mining company wanted to do some counselling with team members and family members and so forth. So I ended up doing a lot of that work. And what staggered me then, Rob, and still staggers me, is that they would do all the humanistic stuff after a fatality, you know, bring in the counselling. But it struck me the more more time I spent around mine sites, they didn't do it up front end. There was very little in the humanistic. And so basically, guys, the last 20 years, most of the last 20 years, our company works with mining, all the macho industries, not just the macho, helping them to develop cultures, helping them to develop psychological safety where people do feel a little more able to speak up, because historically they've been pretty bad at that. So yeah, that's the nutshell version.
That's awesome to hear you talk about it, Clive. It's when you think about some of the stuff, when I think about some of the stuff you must have seen over the years and dealt with, It's quite incredible. And the grief and loss that goes with that extends way beyond the individual that passes into the family and everything. So, and a little bit about me. My wife and I, Sue, have a disabled child. He's non-verbal, no sense of balance, and cerebral palsy all over. So he's 21 years old in a wheelchair, and we've been on that roller coaster for 21 years. And you know, I saw someone years ago, and we had. They said, well, you're an engineer, you can fix many things, but you can't fix this. So you just have to deal with it. But I had grief and loss counselling, but you know, you have the grief, but you don't have the loss. The loss you've experienced is the loss of enjoyment and the loss of life experiences and hopes and dreams. So it's different for me in that, you know, our son is here, and thank goodness he is, because he's changed my world forever. But it's a big challenge, and it never ends. And we celebrate the small achievements. And I took on SIRF Roundtables because it can still keep me attached with industry. And I've met so many fantastic people just like yourselves. But it provides me a platform to still work with industry. And when I'm home, I'm home more, even though you know, I'm still busy. There isn't hardly a day goes by where we don't do some work. So. So that's me, but and I don't normally put myself out in front of an event. I don't think that's the role of a surf person. I think we get the experts in to talk, but I've allowed myself that opportunity in this case because it's so personal to me. So so I appreciate being here just as much as you do and just partaking. So so I think we might get started. For everyone in the audience, we can see the chat line. So feel free to talk about anything that you like and ask questions along the way, and we'll get into the slideshow.